Hey, welcome to Lean In. Today we're going to talk about what Skittles and your heart have in common. We're taking a little bit of a break from what we normally do.
Yep.
We normally jump into a book in the Bible or a letter and we discuss that and go a little bit deeper. But we're in the series here at the church called You're Not the Boss of Me. And we're talking about these emotions that take over. And really, we're taking this scripture verse from Matthew 15:18. It's what Jesus said. He says, but the things that come out of a person's mouth come from the heart, and these defile them. So we're kind of doing a whole series on that, Jess.
Yeah, and we kind of did a little illustration with the Skittles about how the things that no one's going to be surprised if Skittles fall out of this, if I shake it, because Skittles are in it. And that's the same thing with the heart. Oftentimes we're surprised what comes out of our mouth, but honestly, the reality is it had a source somewhere. And Jesus is touching on something that the source is really within the heart. And you won't fix the heart through changing your behavior. You fix your heart by what he talks about, monitoring your heart, and what he talks about how, in fact, following Jesus is really an inside-out approach, that he wants to fix the heart before fixing the outside.
Yeah, and you've said this before, it's not just behavior modification, it's heart transformation.
Right, right.
And as he starts to work you from the inside out, then your actions will change as well. Which I wish Skittles just came out of my heart. That'd be a lot tastier.
Sure.
It's a whole lot worse than that. And we've been talking about these emotions that come out of the heart. Anger, we're going to talk about anger. Envy this coming week. You talked about guilt. It seems like some of these emotions are easier to spot than others. Anger, I mean, you can spot that in your own life. Envy, if you're jealous of somebody, you know when you're jealous of somebody. Fear, but guilt, for me, as you were speaking, I mean, it's one of those things that I feel like it's hard to pinpoint in our own lives. Why do you feel like that is?
That's a good question. I think why guilt is so difficult to pinpoint is because I feel it's this enigma with guilt. Guilt becomes this thing, this emotion that none of us want to feel, and so we do everything in our power, probably short of actually confessing and making it right with that person. If we've done something wrong to that person, we're basically wanting to not feel that guilt, so we'll either deny it or kind of come up with some kind of narrative in our head to kind of pacify and kind of just move past that emotion of guilt. And then what happens is when we kind of move past that emotion thinking, oh, I didn't do anything wrong, so in a sense we're believing our own narrative in our head. And by doing that, it actually masks guilt. It's almost as like guilt leaves this weight, even though we've left the feeling, it's disguised this feeling as weight now. And so now when you're dealing with people, you're just feeling this weight of guilt, but you don't know why you feel this certain way, and it's a struggle, and it's really just because it's this unresolved guilt.
That is so good, because there's moments that we all kind of walk through where we feel like something, like you said, there's this weight and we can't figure out what it is, and maybe that is guilt. It's that unresolved guilt. Now, I know in my life I've let guilt become unresolved. What happens if we don't resolve guilt? I mean, where does it go from there? Because that's kind of something that you can kind of walk through and just let it hang around, but over time...
Yeah, I think unresolved guilt, if it's not dealt with, really turns into this idea of anger towards yourself. And you're disappointed with yourself, you failed, you see yourself as a failure, you've done something wrong. Instead of dealing with it, you're running away from it, and this anger just keeps just bubbling up to the surface. And then you become really sensitive and judgmental on others, because if you're unhappy with you, you're really not going to be happy with a lot of people. And if you're disappointed with you, you're going to be disappointed with, it's easily to be disappointed with others. And so now it almost becomes this thing where it's easy to project this unresolved guilt as being judgmental towards everyone else. And I just wonder if, the church and Christians have gotten a reputation of being judgmental. I wonder how much of unresolved guilt plays in to the idea for church people that have unresolved guilt, instead of dealing with it, instead of going to the cross, instead of going to the person they've wronged, they simply hang on to it. And it just turns out to, for me, just looking at every other flaw that's out there and kind of pointing at them, and somehow by pointing how bad they are, it maybe makes me feel a little bit better about myself.
That is good. And you talked about this a little bit when we were kind of talking through this. There's the scripture that says, you look at someone with the speck in their eye when you've got a plank in yours, and it's that's how guilt is. I mean, you're looking at people and you're going, well, you're guilty of this and you have this, and it's easy to see because you yourself are feeling so guilty about it. Is that something you would,
Yeah, I think it's easy if you have insight into someone else's sin, that should be a red flag that you probably are dealing with it for yourself.
Wow.
I mean, it's exactly what Jesus said. You're worried about the speck in that person's eye when you have this beam in your own eye, and it's because there's a reason why we have insight. It's because we're dealing with it with ourselves, but instead of being humbled by it, we just want to project that, and it's almost a defense mechanism to make ourselves feel better. But because we're mad at ourselves, right? And that just doesn't go away. And so by bringing everyone else down to our level, it makes us feel a little bit better. And in the meantime, it just ruins marriages, ruins your relationship with your kids. It ruins your relationship with your boss. I mean, it's just so heavy that if you're just dealing with guilt, this heavy weight just doesn't subside, no matter what you do.
Man, that's so good. One of the things that we like to do is leave everyone with a question.
Right.
And you asked a great question in the end of your message. And why don't you ask that question, and we can just kind of leave that with them.
Right. So if you're sitting there and you're watching this for whatever reason, and you're wondering, well, you've talked about this weight of guilt. Well, how do you release this weight of guilt? Yeah. Well, there's this amazing word. It's a churchy word. It's called confession. And it's not just confessing to God, but actually confessing what you did wrong to the person you wronged.
Yeah.
And that's how you make restitution. But we don't really want to do that, right?
It's not easy.
It's not easy, and the reason why is because any kind of argument, if we've had an argument, and if I've said something wrong, there's a good chance that you said something wrong and you did something wrong. See, any argument is really not going to be one-sided.
No, it's not. It's usually two people involved. Yeah,
it's two people. So what happens is I'm waiting for you to apologize, and you're waiting for me to apologize. And I'm thinking the best question we should ask ourselves to relieve this guilt, this weight of guilt, is to ask the question: who is waiting on you to make the first move?
Ooh, that is so good.
Right. And that was a question I got from the book Enemies of the Heart by Andy Stanley.
Yeah.
I want to give him credit, but. It's a great question that says, you're not going to apologize for things you didn't do, and you're not saying that you're 100% in the wrong, but you just need to own up what you do. And so is there someone out there that's waiting for you to own up to your part? And instead of waiting them out or playing chicken with your soul, in a sense, just make the first move.
And I don't know, for you in my own life, I've seen the longer I wait, the harder it is and the bigger it becomes, as far as it builds up in your mind of what this is going to be. And so I would say, if you're struggling with that and you're waiting on somebody to make the first move, you be the one to make the first move and go do what you need to do and confess that. And it's gonna really move things forward a whole lot faster and better for you. You can relieve some of that guilt.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And if you're sitting there going, well, I don't think I should be the one to make the first move. Yeah. Can I just say that Jesus made the first move for us? So maybe if you're kind of toying around with that idea of, well, I don't really want to make the first move, just remember what Jesus did for us, you and I, that, what was it, Romans, that says that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So why we were waiting to someone to make the first move, Jesus made the first move for us. And so it's time to understand that depth of grace and then extend it to others. And in the long run, no matter how it turns out, no matter if that person receives it or not, no matter if you get cussed out or not, it's still worth it to relieve yourself of that weight.
Hey, thanks for joining us here on Lean In. We're so excited that you did, and we'd love to invite you this weekend. We're doing part 3 of You're Not the Boss of Me, so you're going to want to check that out as well. Have a great day, guys.